You know what? Jimmy and High Res got it right. This is a war. This is a war on freedom. This is a war on children. This is a war on religion. This is a war on your ability to think. They want to control all information. They want to control what you think, and they're doing it all over the world. All over the world.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me, according to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God.
I'm here tonight as a determined American who loves our country. And my message to you is very clear. Wake up, America. We stand together as proud patriots who deeply love our country and believe in the principles of freedom, democracy, and liberty. I stand with you as a citizen, a veteran, a patriot, but more important, as an American. From this day forward, we must stand tougher and stronger together with an unrelenting goal to not draw red lines and then retreat. We must draw from the rich foundation of our founding fathers' fight for democracy and lead our friends and allies with more determination than ever before. With conviction in our beliefs that pierces through the ideology of any people or any nation that attacks America, America's way of life, and our proud heritage of fearlessness and courage.
We have an army of digital soldiers. What we are now, what we call, I call them, because this was an insurgency, folks. This was run like an insurgency. This was irregular warfare at its finest.
Time is now to recognize our obligation that we have to the world, an obligation to lead the world with unwavering integrity, renewed strength, and unapologetic resolve. We know that America, our nation, is the greatest country in the history of the world. Let there never be a substitute for America, and let us sustain the conviction that our country holds a unique place and role in American history, and American exceptionalism must never fade.
Every other revolution simply exchanged one set of rulers for another set of rulers. But only here did that little band of men so advanced beyond their time that the world has never seen their like since evolve the idea that you and I have within ourselves the God-given right and the ability to determine our own destiny. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them
Hey everybody, it is the 26th of June in the year of our Lord 2023, and today is Monday. We've made it to the start of a new week, and comes the start of the new week, we unveil all of the weekend happenings, all of the things that went down from the end of business on Friday to today, to the beginning of the new week. And we had a couple different interesting situations unfold, including some new information about the Biden crime family and Joe Biden's secret cell phone paid for by Hunter Biden, which we'll talk to about a little bit. The Wagner advance in Russia, was that a psychological operation? Was that an art of war maneuver, pretending that you're weak when you're strong, and as a great distraction to the invasion of Kyiv? And we'll drop into a few different things here. Donald Trump gave a few speeches over the weekend. I got a couple highlights from that, and we'll talk a little bit about what we see coming up over the next few weeks, and especially this week itself. I think we'll have a couple big bomb drops. I think not literally, but we're close. We'll talk about that a little bit too, and we also will talk a little bit about the new spy balloons. With spy balloon season, ladies and gentlemen, we've re-entered spy balloon season, so we'll talk about that a little bit more as we dive into the week ahead. So hope everybody's good out there. And, just as a reminder, we are citizen-funded journalists. We're just trying to get this mission going. I'm doing it all on my dime and my time on Liberty Arise Media here. We have shows 7 days a week, or 6 days a week, 7 days a week sometimes. And if you can just help us in any way, shape, or form, we greatly appreciate it. There's some ways to donate right here: Cash App, Venmo, Buy Me a Coffee, Rumble Rants, and Red Pills on pill.net. And you can also support us by making sure that you click like, you share this stream, and you follow Liberty Arise Media in order to stay up with all of our content, whether it's Bernie Flowers' Loyal Opposition podcast on Tuesdays, or Liberty Arise News here Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays currently, or Hamilton's Homeroom, or Red Time Stories on Thursdays. We've got lots of shows, lots of offerings on Liberty Rise, and if you can help donate to this mission, we appreciate it. And the other people that we'd like to share with you and you can help support them in helping support our sponsors. You help support this show, and that's Be Nourished. Be Nourished healing products. They have some of the most amazing honey on the planet, right from the bees in the north shore of the island of Maui, where there's millions of tropical wildflowers that the bees feed from, and make the most amazing and unique honey you can imagine. And then they mix it with superfoods that make some incredible nourishing products. Check out Be Nourished with this commercial right here. Honey. It's one of the greatest gifts to man. With millions of wildflowers in every bottle, the nourishing power of honey is still yet to be fully discovered. Be Nourished healing products combines healing ingredients from around the planet to the purest honey from the island of Maui to bring magic to your taste buds. The best honey from the most beautiful place to nourish your body, mind, and soul. From our hearts to yours, Be Nourished. And remember, you can use the word Liberty at checkout at nourishedmaui.com, and you can get 22% off your order, and you can get some of the best honey on the planet delivered directly to your front door. All right, well, let's dive into the first story of the day, and it was the big news of the weekend. If you guys didn't hear about this, the Great Wagner PMC debate. What happened? business intrigue and personal beefs. Prigozhin, a CIA stooge bent on deposing Putin. Russian psyop to transfer mercenaries to Belarus within striking distance of Kyiv. Suddenly, the Wagner is the talk of the town. The dramatic and enigmatic events of June 23rd and 24th in Russia have taken the world's imagination by assault. Automatic experts spring from every corner of the internet, and they all have very specific theories that they feel are only one they feel are the only ones acceptable, and all others are crap. They are sure to let you know that. They'll let you know for sure. Whether one wanted or not, many dozen of theories, insights, and hot takes were circulated from all kinds of people, from very well-informed analysis to shills, well-maintained normies, and the most adventurous conspiracy lovers. After surviving the deluge, it's possible to notice that among the working theories there are three different ways to explain the coup attempt, if that's what it was, the reason why Prigozhin led his troops to enter Russian territory, proceed to a siege of Rostov-Don, and send a small, fast detachment to advance on Moscow before turning his forces around and heading into exile in Belarus. Very, very strange, huh? Very, very bizarre turn of events. And we'll talk about that a little bit more and what could potentially be going on. I know everyone's has a whole different idea, and there's many different concepts of what's happening. Roughly speaking, in the opinions splashed on the internet, the developments can be explained by a mega business dispute and personal grievances between Wagner's CEO and Russian MOD generals Shoigu and Jeremasov. A coup this is B, it could be a coup to dethrone Putin, backed by the Western intelligence agencies, or C, a psyop, a master play by Putin, because the Wagner troops that were 200 kilometers of Moscow now are 100 kilometers of Kyiv. Before I discuss each one of these theories, I have to say that they are not mutually exclusive. Crazy as it may sound, it's plausible a reality where more than one of these factors are at play. The first school of thought is this case is what I call the Occam's razor theory, where the simplest explanation is usually the right one. This is the theory that I espouse right now with a moderate degree of certainty. Prigozhin was being squeezed in his businesses by the Russian MOD. All PMC fighters on the SMO zone now have to sign contracts with the ministry, effectively ending Wagner's rogue absolutionists' rule over his troops. Prigozhin said no, they would not sign it. The billionaire former caterer, who lost lucrative contracts to supply the military forces, so he felt his livelihood and maybe even his freedom was at stake. You could say he drives a hard bargain in the form of a military column headed to Moscow. The advantage of this reasoning is that there's precious little speculation. All facts are verified and on the record. By the way, out of his 40,000 troops, only around 8,000 went to Russia for the coup. And out of those, were duped into thinking they were going to fight Ukrainians to defend Belgorod. Second, the very popular theory is that Prigozhin is a treasonous agent of the West or of the Russian liberal elites, or both. It's a pet peeve of mine that people will say that it's CIA or the deep state, a substitute to thinking about life in its complexity. However, I must admit that there are a lot of data points that suggest that this theory is indeed possible, as was demonstrated in the recent Discord leaks. Prigozhin not only has an open channel of comms with the Ukrainian intelligence services, but also shockingly was willing to exchange information regarding Russian troop positions for a retreat of Kyiv's troops in Bakhmut and Artemovsk. Yes, for his military victory, he would compromise territorial positions, equipment, and troops. Ukrainians did not trust him to deliver, so maybe it was a ruse after all. But after you add this to the many spurious declarations about Russians' territorial losses that were debunked, his doomed predictions of a collapse in the defense that did not materialize at all, and lately even his declarations about how unjust the SMO was and the Ukrainians never attacked the people of Donbass, all that paint a semblance of a traitorous agent. So the theory goes that he hoarded ammo during the Bakhmut siege to march on Moscow right in the middle of the enemy's offensive, knife in the back style. But when none of the support he expected was promised materialized, he reached a settlement to save his own skin. Finally, we have the theory that there was a masterful psyop by Putin to move Wagner troops to Belarus, 100 kilometers away from Kyiv, and able to protect its border against the widely expected Polish and Baltic mercenary forces that aim to replace the same Lukashenko that was the negotiator that ended the crisis. During the first hours of the adventure, I was a proponent of this theory. I thought the objective of the Rus was to bait Kyiv into going all in and overcommitting its troops, trying to exploit the chaos so that defenses could decimate them. It's Sun Tzu 101, appear weak when you are strong and strong when you are weak, the art of war. This may sound like a coup from pro-Russian sensitives, but you know who thought the very same way, UK's intelligence services, who strongly advised Zelensky not to jump in and launch a massive invasion. And they were not wrong, because Wagner is not involved in the formidable RF defenses at all, and all the shenanigans did not weaken those in the least. Other theoretical objective of the staged coup was that a great many weak Russian officials fled during the turmoil, or else contacted Western handlers. So a purge is oncoming thanks to the situation the crisis created. That's true. However, the Wagner troops advanced. They reportedly shot down a number of RF planes and helicopters, and in one case, Wagner's CEO agreed to pay 50 million rubles to the families of the airmen killed in the attack. At this point, the ruse, the PSYOP, lost my adherence, and Occam's razor was calling me to the much simpler first theory explanation. As I mentioned before, the theories may coexist in some fashion, maybe even the three of them, with Avgin Prigozhin as a triple agent for his businesses, his Putin, and for the enemy all at the same time. Far-fetched? Well, we'll see. We'll continue to keep diving into this. It seems to me that they stopped short of Moscow, and then they turned around, and now they're going into hiding and in completely unharmed after such a crazy attempted coup, after such a backstabbing move by Prigozhin. There you go. I'm having trouble with that today. Did you know Vladimir Putin was a ruthless killer of his political foes? Except Prigozhin. Why is that? I find it fascinating that the Western narrative surrounding Prigozhin now emphasizes his virulent hatred of Russian Ministry of Defense and portrays him as the commander and brains behind the creation of the Wagner private military company, aka Wagner PMC. Yet Prigozhin owes a significant portion of his financial success to the sweetheart contracts with the Ministry of Defense. Go figure. I want to elaborate on my reasons for doubting the story that Prigozhin, on his own initiative, launched Friday's mutiny with no coherent plan for toppling Minister of Defense Shoigu or Chief of the Army's Gerasimov. He did not follow the normal coup script of seizing control of key communications and military nodes. Nope, he sauntered to Rostov-on-Don, some 700 miles of Moscow, with a small band of followers and began making threats that have no viable possibility of being consummated. Oh, yeah, almost forgot. He sent 3,000 troops in a long convoy of trucks, at least 60, on a road trip to Moscow. Has anyone done the math on how long it takes to gas up a fleet of trucks like that? I'm guessing a couple of hours at least. Then you have to factor in the potty breaks for the drivers. The troops can piss in a bottle, I guess, while the trucks are capable of traveling at speeds of 100 kilometers per hour or more. The reality of a convoy makes it more likely that the average speed is up to 60 kilometers per hour. That is why it would have taken that raiding party at least 20 hours to get to Moscow. After 20 hours in a cramped truck with no luxury seating, do you think the Wagner boys would have been in shape to square off with Kremlin guards? The whole narrative is just ridiculous. How about the timing of the uprising? In coincidence with the end of the massive NATO military exercises, on the very day the exercises concluded, Prigozhin decides is General Pinchat and that Shangu of Salvador Allende. Coincidences? Then there is a contradictory Putin meme. Did you know that Vladimir Putin is a ruthless killer of the political opponents and that betray him? Except for Prigozhin. Business insiders offer a list that is but a fraction of the deaths attributed to the opponents of the Clintons, but you got to give Putin credit for trying to keep up with Bill and Hillary. And so here's a whole list. Pavel Antov, Ravil Maganov, Dan Rapoport, Mikhail Lensin. It keeps going on and on. So why is Prigozhin still walking around as a free bird? A comfy retirement in Belarus seems out of character for the Western image of Putin as a ruthless ruler who is alleged to routinely order a dirt nap for his opponents. In 2012-2013, the Russian media began to pay attention to another friend, Putin's personal chef, Prigozhin, president of the Concord Catering Company. Prigozhin also has other responsibilities. He is the man who set up a trolling office, otherwise known as the Internet Research Agency, just outside of St. Petersburg, in which students are paid to write comments online slandering the West and glorifying Putin. The trolling office is run by people from the ranks of the largest pro-Kremlin youth movement in Russian history. Nashi, the organization's annual forum of Selinger, has been attended at various times by Vladimir Putin, Dmitry Medvedev, and several other senior officials. Then, like a Russian version of George Jefferson, he moved up on the to the big time. He snagged a contract with the Russian military, the Ministry of Defense. He is in charge of supplying all army units, towns in the country. There are hundreds of these towns, maybe 1,000. I live in one of them for many years. This was a quote. Prigozhin is also in charge of the housing repairs and maintenance of these towns, as well as the building new facilities, notably on the border with Ukraine. One important detail is the same period as also becomes a Putin troll. He is exactly the one who owns two famous troll factories in St. Petersburg, located in Olegino, and one in Savuskina Street. All those numerous pro-Putin comments are organized by Prigozhin Company. Interesting, huh? So I like that. It's a good message there. Why would he just be allowed to go away and in completely unharmed in retirement in Belarus when anyone else who stepped up and has stabbed Putin in the back or even threatened Putin has ended up dead? His rumor or his name or his what's it called? His reputation as a killer, as a ruthless killer, doesn't seem to be holding water in this situation. Either that, or there's a deal at play here. let's see this other article that came out that seems to be pretty relevant to our current situation. Kim.com, did Putin and Prigozhin play the CIA to the tune of $6 billion? Could this give us a little bit of hint of what actually happened? Hacker Kim.com has offered his take on the Wagner Group in Russia, intimidating that Wagner boss Prigozhin may have collected billions from the CIA to stage a coup and then aborted the coup. Several observers, such as Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, have speculated the Wagner Group may have had U.S. backing. A whole lot of neocons deleting pro-Prigozhin tweets right now. On Saturday, Kim.com Schmitz offered his explanation of the background on the inner Russian strife. My view on the actions by Prigozhin and the Wagner Group in Russia. This started as a power struggle between Prigozhin and Shoigu. In the beginning of the special military operation, Shoigu and his team made mistakes, and Prigozhin became the strong critic of Shoigu. In my view, Shoigu then provoking Prigozhin by the limiting ammunition supplies to Bakhmut, resulting in Wagner Group losses and a strong reaction from Prigozhin. Many of you have seen the video of Prigozhin's attacking Shoigu and the Russian military leadership. Ammunition deliveries were restored and the victory in Bakhmut was achieved, but the video outburst by Prigozhin was likely counterproductive for him because the Kremlin and the senior political leadership in Moscow saw him as a loose cannon who can't be trusted. Prigozhin doubled down, predicting a massive loss for the Russian military, claiming that it was not ready for the Ukrainian counteroffensive. He claimed that the Russian troops are badly equipped and poorly managed by Shoigu. With the Russian military successfully repelling the Ukrainian counteroffensive, Prigozhin had played himself into a corner, and his time was running out because Shoigu and his generals delivered a major victory for the Kremlin. In my view, the action of Prigozhin are an act of desperation because he has lost the power struggle against Shoigu and is likely facing serious retaliation. Western media claims that in an attempted coup against Putin, there's nonsense. The popularity of Putin within Russia and in the non-Western world has never been higher. However, this war between Prigozhin and Shoigu is an unwelcome distraction for the Kremlin, and the most likely outcome will be the arrest and termination of yes. We will we'll see how this all plays out here, but I think that this is a very good possibility that this was an attempted coup that was funded by the CIA, and then Prigozhin basically pulled the plug and played the CIA for up to $6 billion is what the word seems to be. So let's take a listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene. She has a little something to say about this as well, just like we were saying in the last article. Marjorie Taylor Greene hints U.S. government could be behind the Russian coup attempt. Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia took to Twitter to respond to the earlier reports of Wagner mercenary troops making their way to Moscow in an alleged coup d'etat attempt. And as the Gateway Pundit previously reported, the head of the Wagner private military company, Prigozhin, never made it to Moscow, but instead turned his troops around and ordered them to go back to their bases. Prigozhin's decision to stand down came after he negotiated with Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko for several hours. Greene, just like many other Americans, finds the entire ordeal very suspicious and told her followers on Twitter, after our government has been funding a proxy war with Russia and Ukraine for over a year, I sure hope our government isn't behind a coup attempt currently happening in Russia. She continued, regime change as a nuclear-armed country may lead to terrible consequences the American people do not want. After the government has been She followed up her tweet by sharing a meme of Ray Epps in Moscow wearing a Soviet Ushanka hat. Fox News host Rachel Duffy is also questioning the U.S. government was behind the recent moves by the Wagner Group. Fox News' Rachel Campos Duffy questions if the U.S. was behind it. Let's listen to this video.
You know, back in the Iraq and Afghanistan war, I was one of those people that just sort of believed everything that came out of my government. And now I don't believe a lot of it. And I'm always questioning things. And I asked our last guest on this topic, Rebecca Koffler, if she thought it was possible that we could be behind this attempted coup with the Wagner Group. And she said it's definitely one of the possibilities, or NATO.
You know, I think she's right that the United States government, whether it's been actively or behind the scenes, been very involved in Ukraine and Russia for a long time. I mean, one of the things I was struck with when I went to Ukraine right after the revolution in 2014 was that Russians would come up, pro-Russian Ukrainians would come up, they'd point to a hotel room in the Maidan Square, they would point to a window, so that's the CIA's office. They were directing this entire coup against the president of Ukraine, pro-Russian elected president of Ukraine. And so were we involved? Were we not involved? We always said we weren't involved, but, you know, maybe we were involved. I just don't know. And at this point, all the people who are going to tell you, oh, this is going to happen this way, it's going to be that way, it's not. We don't know yet. We just have to wait and see how it unfolds.
We'll have to wait and see how it unfolds. Let's take a little listen in on how this whole Wagner advance unfolded.
For less than 24 hours, there was a challenge to Russia's leadership by a private army who has played a key role in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Here's how it unfolded. Late Friday in Russia, the leader of the Wagner Group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, claimed that the Russian military killed an enormous amount of his troops in an artillery strike, and that his forces were going to cross into Russia, calling it the March of Justice. Russia responded by issuing an arrest warrant for Prigozhin for mutiny, denying his claims, and a heavy military presence appeared in Moscow. By early Saturday morning, Wagner forces were seen in Rostov, 600 miles south. It's the main logistical hub for Russian forces operating in Ukraine. Prigozhin said that his forces had taken the city.
7 часов 30 минут утра под контролем военные объекты Ростова, в том числе аэродром.
In a televised address, Russian President Vladimir Putin responded and called for his military to stop the revolt.
Защитим и наш народ, и нашу государственность от любых угроз, в том числе от внутреннего предательства.
Residents of Rostov stocked up on gas and cleared grocery store shelves. Meanwhile, Wagner vehicles were on the move. They went along the M4 highway, which goes northward straight to Moscow, where roadblocks began going up. About halfway, 300 miles from Moscow, in Voronezh, Russian military helicopters opened fire on them. A warehouse and fuel tanks were destroyed, and Wagner forces reportedly shot down 6 Russian helicopters and a plane. Wagner forces continued to move north, but by the time they were within 125 miles of Moscow, a deal was reached.
Понимая всю ответственность за то, что будет пролита русская кровь с одной из сторон, мы разворачиваем свои колонны и уходим в обратном направлении в полевые лагеря согласно плану.
The advance was over, brokered by the president of Belarus. According to a Putin spokesman, the charges against Prigozhin will be dropped and he will move to the neighboring country, ending an armed confrontation that lasted less than 24 hours.
That's very interesting. A 24-hour coup. I wonder what was really behind that. Very, very interesting. Let's see if we got any sort of speculations. Here's Ben Harnwell on the War Room.
Ben Harnwell in Rome, you are particularly interested in Tanya Tay's home country of Belarus and how close that is to Kiev, sir, correct?
Jack. Yeah, well, I am. The border in kilometers is about 77 kilometers only from the southernmost tip of Belarus down to the outskirts of Kiev.
Okay, hold it, dude. Hold, whoa, dude. You're on War Room. We deal in miles here. Give me my. Don't give me kilometers. Give me clicks. Give me a mile. How far is that in miles? Was that 50 miles, 60 miles, 70, 60 miles?
Basically, yeah. I'm
don't go EU on me.
Oh, well, I have to do my distances now in kilometers, otherwise I'd quickly break the speed limit here in Italy. And obviously I would never want to do that if any of the Carabinieri are listening. It's going to be about 50 miles. If you think that on Saturday, the Prigozhin column, which he boasted was 50 kilometers in length, covered a distance around 250 miles north from Rostov up to north before then pivoting westwards to Belarus by the end of the day. So it covered in about 10, 12 hours, 250 miles. So it's not going to take a great deal of time to come as a lightning action, as a decapitation, to come in from Belarus and just take Kiev for exactly the same reason that the whole world was watching on Saturday, which was everyone said Putin is particularly vulnerable, not me, you or Jack, I have to say, everyone as in the rest of the world that doesn't know what he's talking about, said that the particular reason Putin is in difficulty is that it's very lightly defended. They basically got ordinary civilians in uniform there. All the serious troops are down fighting in Ukraine, leaving the capital vulnerable. It's the same thing now, Steve, in reverse.
So, multiple different ideas playing out here. Again, until we take time and really dive into what really happened here and what it is really about, we won't really truly get the full picture. And, I think that this is revealing something much bigger. That's why I'm spending so much time on it. I think that this is a grand art of war that's being played out on the grand scheme, on this theater of the absurd that we're watching. And I think that what's happening here is art of war. It's a narrative control scenario that we are seeing, and I think that this is a last ditch effort to try to save face and to attempt to turn the tides of the narrative warfare that is playing out on the mainstream. Let's listen to a couple more explanations. This is Colonel John Mills.
I've got John Mills. John, the Russian generals haven't made a decision. One thing I can tell you, at least from the footage we're seeing, and we can't verify this stuff, but the footage is coming up, and the Brits are putting it out. The Daily Mail's putting it out. It doesn't look like the Wagner group is being heavily bombed or started. It doesn't look like blockades or they're being thwarted. Give me your assessment of these Russian generals. What are they like?
Yeah, Steve, it is high drama, high noon. Everybody has to decide whose side they're on. And the untold story is everybody, as you mentioned it, everybody's checking their bank accounts and trying to do a quick calculus. They're looking at Cyprus, Malta, Panama. How much money do they have in their account? Whose side, who looks like they're winning? Which way should they rally? And at this time, the next 24 to 48 hours is critical. This is critical. When we were calling Iraqi generals on the phone before a regime change in Iraq, you had to put it to them pretty clear, direct, and up front. Whose side are you on? I need to know. I need an answer right now. Whose side are you on? And this is the phone lines are burning up as both Wagner and Force are making those calls.
What about the wealth? They've skimmed wealth and they got in banks in Malta and Cyprus. These guys are already somewhat taken care of. This won't come down about patriotism, about Mother Russia. This will come about money and power.
Yeah. This is a total thugocracy at this point in time. It's a gang war free for all, and it's not about Mother Russia. It's not about the glory of Russia at this point in time. It's about survival. Who's going to win? Whose side do you want to be on? Do you want to, a week from now, are you going to be on the winning side, or a week from now, are you going to be dead? So this is a pretty grave, serious, and mortal game.
Yeah. Okay, where do people go to follow you over the weekend, John?
So let's listen to a little bit of a conversation that happened on the Jack Posobiec show.
Joining us now is Jack Posobiec, who's been on the case. He doesn't take a Sabbath like I do. He was the first person that I messaged. Well, I think he does a little bit of a phone Sabbath, but I said, Jack, what in holy Moscow is going on here? And he had the answers. Jack, thank you for making time for us. Jack, what happened in Russia over the weekend?
Yeah, Charlie, I appreciate that. So behind the scenes, of course, Charlie texts me, I guess what it would be Saturday night, and then says, "Hey, what's going on in Russia? I've been off. I've been doing the Sabbath with the phone, and now I do mine, but I typically do it on Sundays where I stay out." And so when I was all up on Saturday, paying attention to all this, and I said, "Charlie, it looks like there's one of these Russian mercenaries went rogue, decided to take a run on Moscow. He got turned back very quickly, and he's headed to Belarus now." Just one sentence. And that is in one sentence essentially what happened. But the kicker here, Charlie, is that with the exception of myself and the other guys on War Room on Saturday morning for the Saturday show, everyone in mainstream media from Fox to CNN to MSNBC said this was going to be the beginning of the end for Russia. A civil war was about to break out, that everything was coming loose. Putin's entire regime is flying off the skids. And it just really interested me because these are people like Michael McFowle, like Peter Zehan, like, even Malcolm Nance and some of these guys who supposedly have been studying this for decades and decades. In fact, McFowle, of course, served as our ambassador to Russia at one point. And all of them got this completely wrong, didn't have any understanding of what's going on in there. And then Oliver Darcy, which I thought was hilarious, came out saying, at times like this, I really wish that Elon would take away those blue checks from allowing anyone to just buy one, because CNN needs to find good sources of information from Twitter. And I said, wait a minute, you're CNN. Shouldn't you guys have sources like all over Russia? Shouldn't you guys be on the ground doing actual reporting on both sides, like I don't know, like a news organization would? But you're not. You're just reading Twitter and Telegram like everybody else. And unfortunately, Charlie, that's what led them to these insane levels of just bewildering comments, pulling their hair out over the weekend, saying Russia's completely falling apart, when instead what did end up happening was, as we said, the guy got turned around, sent out to Belarus. The other mercenaries are now being folded back into the Russian army. And Charlie, it is like I opened my Machiavelli this morning. Mercenaries show no fear of God nor fidelity toward man.
So, seems like there's a lot more going on there. Of course, the Mockingbird mainstream media was exposed once again by jumping all over this and getting their mainstream news from Twitter feeds, and just wow, that's some real reliable news sourcing. I feel much better about my news sourcing now. Thanks for. Thanks that I'm on the pro level with CNN. I'm glad I can fish through Twitter just like the best of them. So there's so much else going on in Russia, and obviously it seems to be a psychological operation. There seems to be lots of different agendas at play here, and you can't really trust anything that you're actually seeing or hearing. So the key is to really be patient and let it play out and see what the truth really is before jumping on the hype of the news media bandwagon. But there's one thing that did concern me when I saw, and it didn't have anything to do with Well, I guess it does have a little bit to do with the potential attempted coup. Is there's nuclear weapons involved in this situation. Like we're talking about nuclear armed countries, and we're talking about a volatile situation with many people wanting to get their hands on the trigger. And then we see this article that just came out. And this article is a test launch of a Russian nuclear torpedo may be imminent. Situation in Ukraine deteriorating. China making moves. Biden administration failing to protect the national security in increasingly dangerous world. While rampant confusion about the PMC Wagner insurrection that wasn't dominates coverage of the rapidly escalating conflict between Russia and NATO, something much more significant may be occurring beneath the surface. The K-329 Belgorod is an advanced Oscar II class submarine commissioned by Vladimir Putin in 2022 and intended to serve as a launch platform for the Poseidon nuclear torpedo drones. According to a report, the USNI News, Poseidon drones are strategic nuclear weapons designed to circumvent the West's growing ballistic missiles defense capability. After launching an 80-foot nuclear torpedo would move, after launching the 80-foot nuclear torpedo would move undetected across the ocean floor before detonating a 100-megaton cobalt-enhancing warhead. Think about that for a second, ladies and gentlemen. This crazy scenario of talking about nuclear warheads and stepping up the nuclear fear tactics. On Friday, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov announced that Russia would not notify Washington of Poseidon's nuclear submarine drone test. Why would they? Russia's largest submarine, Belgorod K-329, has sailed from Soverenotsk, something like that, in the Russian Arctic in the past few days. Sutton explains also sailing from Soverenotsk was the support ship, the Akademik Alexandrov. The ship is associated with testing of the two M39 Poseidon intercontinental nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed autonomous torpedoes. The sailing of the two together, plus one signs observed, may indicate that the Poseidon test launch is imminent. Oh, wow. That's not a good thing. OSINT indicates that Poseidon intercontinental nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed autonomous torpedo launches from Russian submarine Belgorod may occur in the next few days. It is not related to the Wagner coup, but may provide a show of strength. In a phone conversation this afternoon, former U.S. Air Force intelligence officer Tanya Hildenbrand points out that OSINT shows final delivery of the 2 megaton torpedoes have taken place, so testing could take place with little to no warning. As reported yesterday by Gateway Pundit, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene and other prominent Republicans decry what they say was a CIA involvement in yesterday's theater show in southern Russia. As was further reported this Monday, concerns about the rogue PMC Wagner CEO Prigozhin and the future of the Russian Defense Ministry, Sergei Shoigu, continue to persist, perhaps justifiably. But given the situation on the ground, one unnamed analysis who works with the U.S. intelligence community says the coup hoax was likely done to move Prigozhin into the shadows and make the paper trail on Wagner much more difficult to follow. This all happens 2 weeks after the Wall Street Journal did their big hit piece on Wagner. The analysis explained most Americans likely hadn't heard of it until then. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Tanya Hildenbrand explains further. So once again, take a listen right there. I think this seems to be a very plausible situation. They were exposed through a hit piece that was done in the Wall Street Journal. It's in the mainstream media. And then, all of a sudden, a week later, 2 weeks later, Prigozhin creates this theatrical coup attempt on the Russian government, gets turned around, and then disappears into the shadows. Seems like an interesting coincidence. Most analysts are talking about how weak Putin looks with the Wagner Group turning on him, but there were no defects from his inner circle. Prigozhin made a deal, and Putin offered to integrate the Wagner Group soldiers into the Russian military. Another unnamed analysis points out that yesterday's development moved the PMC Wagner head to a new position in Belarus. Interesting. Didn't the Russian military just move nuclear weapons into Belarus within the last week or so? Very interesting. And what was another thing here? That Putin looks weak. Talking about how weak Putin looks. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, art of war. Look weak when you are strong. Look strong when you are weak. Western forces are simultaneously drawn further away from the defenses in Kyiv, providing an enhanced opportunity for Russia to attack from the north. Under the well-seasoned command of Prigozhin, the analysis explained. Hildebrand says the situation becomes more of a challenge if Putin resolves ongoing supply problems which have plagued the Russian military since the onset of this invasion. While America faces diminishing influence in Taiwan, the new front in the Ukraine conflict could quickly lead to a globally coordinated assault on U.S. national security interests. Some analysis suggests such a move is already well underway. Several sources say Chinese military personnel may already be conducting advanced operations within the borders of the U.S. territory, and we are seeing it with the open border and many, many, many CCP Chinese folks coming across the border, perhaps in preparation of a large-scale global insurgency campaign intended to completely dismantle Western power. You think? More people catching on why I keep going back to Netherlands. Railway from China ends at Rotterdam, biggest harbor in Europe. Just south of Rotterdam is the second biggest harbor, Antwerp. Both harbors to be tri-state city, major control of Europe. And here's memeing of Lama Zens. Farmers out. Dutch people happy and owning nothing in their 15 zones. Africa and Middle Eastern replacements in. One big plan no one voted for because that's how democracy works. Tri-state city clusters, Rafine River Delta, the world's #1 urban power center. 30 million people, 150 billion internal trade volumes. EU capital, gateway to Europe, top innovation delta. Interesting. As America grapples with an unprecedented number of operations conducted by near-peer advisories around the world, the alliance between Communist China and Putin's Russia presents an increasingly perilous situation. Should Russia prove capable of launching a Poseidon nuclear strike on the east coast of the United States, America could be in much worse position than anyone should like to consider. Let's listen in to Chip Roy on the Charlie Kirk Show.
I want to play this piece of tape here, Congress, and get your reaction. Lindsey Graham basically saying that Ukraine needs to be part of NATO. That's effectively what he's saying here. Play cut 16.
We're introducing a resolution today, since the Senate resolution that says that if Russia or Belarus, or a proxy of Russia, explodes a nuclear device inside of Ukraine to stop the counteroffensive or to try to break the will of the Ukrainian people, such an attack should be considered an attack on NATO itself.
Congressman, this is extraordinary language from a U.S. Senator. Your reaction?
Well, these are effectively kind of dueling resolutions. In fact, I believe we dropped those or introduced, as we say, those bills on the same day. And the fact is, this is precisely the problem. You have members in Congress, you have senators who are itching to raise this up to effectively the status of war on the United States. And we believe, and my colleagues that introduced this resolution with me, we believe that it's important to state the opposite, frankly, that we have an obligation to make a decision at every turn whether or not something is in our national security interest and rises to the level of engagement of military force for our national security interest under our Constitution. The declaration of war is supposed to mean something. Charlie, it's also one of the reasons why I've introduced, a bill to end the authorization of the use of the military force in Iraq. Because last time I checked, Saddam Hussein's been dead for, 15 plus years. We don't need to be operating under a 20-year-old authorization to use the military force so the defense complex can have some more friggin' toys. It's being used for all manners of sin, creating our government to be making our government bigger, more powerful, more authoritarian, undermining our freedom while us go around to try to play world police. I believe in having a strong deterrent military. I suspect you do as well. But you should not be willy-nilly engaging around the world while you are having, frankly, our own fires in our own backyard. I was just sitting at the Rio Grande. We're right across the river. Cartels were acting with impunity, killing thousands of Americans with fentanyl.
Yeah, so Congressman, this is what just drives me nuts we have Lindsey Graham and all these war hawks that want hundreds of billions of dollars more to be spent. Congressman, why don't we use our own military on the southern border before we care about Ukraine's border? Where does that ridiculous approach come from? It's anti-American, it's globalist. Where does that come from, Congressman?
Well, look, to the border question, we should, right? We should recognize the cartels or the equivalent of terrorist organizations, or certainly, criminal organizations, transnational criminal organizations. We should take them out. We should authorize military force. As Governor DeSantis said on the border just about an hour ago, he said, look, if somebody's cutting the fence down, that's like them breaking into your house, and you're allowed to use force to push back on someone breaking into your house. It ought to be the same if they're trying to break into your country, especially when they're cartels, cutting fence with, blowtorches or whatever they're cutting them with, and bringing in backpacks of fentanyl. Meanwhile, as you said, Lindsey Graham, as you said, the war hawks in Washington, they've never met a conflict they didn't want to get us involved in. They've never met something. And look, I really do believe that is a part of an overall, both cultural and worse, sinister kind of cabal, if you will, in D.C., where everybody there is just basically built around, hey, let's just go get more money for more contracts to get more defense built up. And all of that is not tethered to a strategic plan to make our country safer. I could probably sign on to some more defense spending if it was built around a strategic goal of standing athwart China, sparingly using our military, and really strong diplomacy where we were creating a massive amount of American energy. But instead, we're ceding all that ground while we then go try to meddle in more foreign engagements, which, frankly, I bet more Ukrainians are dead than might have been had we not been throwing $113 billion in a blank check to Ukraine.
I couldn't agree more. This is just this perspective that is dominant in Washington, D.C. It's a hangover from the Cold War and 9/11. It doesn't make us safer. We are a big country. It would be nice if our military started with the immediate. Defend the homeland. And they say, oh, we are. No, you're not. There's 10,000 people breaking into the homeland every single day. It is the Department of invading other countries and colonizing them to believe in LGBTQ crap.
Yes, absolutely. And meanwhile, while this is all going on, and of course, we think about Ukraine and we think about this focus on Ukraine and Russia and the potential moving further to world war. We have the corruption and the compromised resident of the Senior Living Center and DC. This feckled old man and feckless old man in the White House, And here is the whole case continues to unravel with him as we continue to make this nation more vulnerable and more vulnerable, getting into a place of complete destability around the nation, around the planet. The Burisma case in Ukraine and the Hunter Biden case in the U.S., that we find out they're forged using the same scheme. Synchronization before the start of the election campaign, Burisma case in the Ukraine and the Hunter Biden case in the U.S. are created according to the same scheme. In order to get Hunter Biden out from under attack of the Biden family successfully adopted the Ukrainian experiences. As a result, the Ukrainian Burisma case and the American Hunter case are closed under the same scheme. By changing the charges, striking a deal with the investigations, pressuring judicial authorities, and fictitious conduct of criminal investigations, the intensified activity of the Oversight and Accountability Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives, led by James Comer, and the emergence of more and more evidence of corruption schemes involving the president's family seem to have forced Biden to act unconventionally. Earlier this week, Hunter Biden in particular cut a deal with the investigation and agreed to plead guilty in the federal case opened as a result of the years-long investigation into his tax fraud. It would first appear that the justice had been served and the guilty party will be punished, but upon closer examination, it becomes apparent that instead of a huge sentence on dozens of episodes involving influence peddling, money laundering, and pure corruption in Ukraine, Romania, China, and Myanmar, Hunter Biden, and with him his father, will actually get away with it. Under the influence of the elder Biden, the U.S. judicial system, the FBI, and the Department of Justice repeated the technology he successfully tested in Ukraine. There are top manager of Burisma, where Hunter Biden was a board member, was caught trying to give the largest bribe in Europe in cash at $6 million. But instead of imprisoning, he got 1 year probation and was freed. Let us repeat, 1 year on probation for the most serious criminal offense, of which the punishment in Ukraine is imprisonment for up to 8 years with confiscation of property. This clever combination of substitution of charges, quick organization of the trial, signing a deal with the investigation, and no less quick closing of the case is certainly not unknown. Who of the Biden family, but in fact, it was used at the level for the first time. Let's talk about this in more detail. And we'll go into that and at a different time. But wow, that is, we continue to see that unravel, and we continue to see the same playbook being played out over and over and over once again. And it's just absolute insanity. And then this article came out on yesterday, I believe it was actually. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene says Hunter Biden wrote off human sex trafficking as a business expense. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene slammed that charge against Hunter Biden for being too weak, considering that the president's son allegedly wrote off human sex trafficking as a business expense. Greene addresses the issues during an appearance on the Media Buzz on Fox News. The congresswoman asserted, unless you're the son of President of the United States, you go to jail for some same crimes that Hunter Biden has committed. Now, through the Ways and Means Committee, the shocking information that they released yesterday that Hunter Biden did not report $2.2 million to the IRS, Greene said. Hunter Biden also wrote off paying prostitutes through his business as a business expense. I'm a business owner of a construction company, and I know what writing off business expenses are, but writing off human sex trafficking is no type of expense anyone should write off for their business, and that's something they should go to jail for. Greene continued, it doesn't matter to me whether it's a Trump-appointed attorney, Trump-appointed judge. If it does not matter, the attorney is not doing his job. Oversight Republicans, Ways and Means Republicans, and Judiciary Republicans are unraveling the crimes of Hunter Biden faster than the attorney ever did. He didn't do his job. He didn't go far enough. And these charges are a pathetic excuse that the American people are not buying. As a matter of fact, they are furious over it. According to the whistleblowers, IRS criminal supervisor Special Agent Gary Shapley Jr., in his testimony before Congress last week, the younger Biden wrote off dues to a sex club and prostitution as business expenses. They were multiple examples of prostitutes that were ordered, basically, and we have all the communications between that, where he would pay for these prostitutes, would book them a flight where even the flight tickets showed their name, and then he expensed those, Shapley testified. Shapley said the Hunter Biden was expensing personal expenses as his business expenses. So, I mean, everything there was a payment that there was a $25,000 payment to one of his girlfriends, and it said golf membership. And then it went out and followed that money, and it was for a sex club membership in L.A., Shapley added. Hunter Biden has agreed to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor counts of willful failure to pay federal income tax and to enter into a pretrial diversion agreement on the charge of possession of a firearm by a person who is an unlawful user of an or addicted to controlled substances. So we see this entire debacle of this crime family, this disgusting crime family, break out on the mainstream news, and then we find out that Hunter Biden has also been writing off a secret phone that Joe Biden's been using, that Hunter Biden's been paying for. Let's check this out.
Very good point. Look, you both have broken so much news on this story. Peter, you broke a lot of this years ago about the Biden family influence peddling, and you've got new information this morning, breaking news on a cell phone that Joe Biden was using. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. What is the line of communications between Hunter Biden and his business partners and Joe Biden when he's vice president of the United States? It's not the government phone. It's not Joe Biden's personal phone. We know from the laptop that Hunter Biden's business paid for a private phone line that Joe Biden used while he was vice president. It was from AT&T. It was $300 a month. It was a global phone where you could access somebody anywhere around the world. We shared that phone number and that account information with people at the House Oversight Committee. My hope is that they haven't already, they will subpoena those records, because I think it will give an indication on how tight the communication was. And that may be the phone, for example, that the Ukrainian, the Burisma executive might have used in this allegation that he talked to Joe Biden in recorded conversations. I would just say one other thing, Maria, as it relates to that sort of shakedown phone call with Henry Zhao that we alluded to. Henry Zhao in 2015 had already sent $5 million to the Bidens. He was the head of a Harvest investment firm. And what's interesting is in the correspondence there, Hunter Biden again talks to Zhao in the context of, this is a deal that's important to my family, involving his father. Let's also keep in mind we fixate on the criminal element of this. We also have to focus on the espionage element of this. Henry Zhao paid $5 million to Hunter Biden from an account that was part of a company that he co-owned with the family of the Minister of State Security of China, who's in charge of the entire spy apparatus. And you see that in every deal that Hunter Biden did in China. These individuals that are sending him money have ties to Chinese intelligence.
Unbelievable. We have to take a quick break and then talk more about that and these 17 recordings.
Ties to Chinese intelligence. That's interesting. We have that information now, and then as we find out he's ties to Chinese intelligence, we also find out this here on this article that just came out today. It is balloon season, ladies and gentlemen. We have balloons back in the mail, that are back in the news, back on the mainstream. Biden's DOD informs U.S. congressmen they won't destroy potential spy balloons that are flying over Montana airspace. Once again, in a recent development, the Biden regime and Department of Defense has stated it will not interfere with a potential spy balloon reported over American airspace. The DoD's response has sparked backlash from Representative Matt Rosendale, Republican from Montana, who criticized the regime's lax approach towards foreign surveillance activities over the United States. Rep. Rosendale communicated his concern after constituents in Dawson County, Montana, reported tracking a balloon cruising at 57,000 feet altitude over eastern Montana on Sunday evening. A congressman conducted the DoD and was informed, or contacted the DoD and was informed that while they were aware of the balloon, they would not investigate due to its size and its low probability of conducting surveillance activities. Oh my, oh my. If this is not a U.S. asset, this is a significant national security concern, and the Biden regime's dismissal of the potential risk is not justifiable. If the spy balloon incident in February has taught us anything, it's the Montanans are vigilant and concerned about what's flying over their state. They deserve to know that their government is taking their security seriously, said Rosendale. The reference to the spy balloon in February points to an earlier incident where the unidentifiable aerial equipment was reported in Montana's airspace. Rosendale and other citizens were alarmed by what they saw as an inadequate response from a federal government. The Biden regime was aware that the Chinese spy balloon in the U.S. airspace since the previous Saturday, January 28th. The Biden administration initially ignored the threat, hoping the balloon would not be detected, but after amateur photographers captured the balloon flying over Montana, and the Biden White House had to admit they knew about the balloon. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said the U.S. military had to shut down communications and movements last week as the Chinese spy balloon flew over strategic military bases during its week-long flyover of the United States from Alaska to South Carolina. The balloon was only shot down after it went offshore. Joe Biden claimed the spy balloon gathered intel over U.S. military bases as not a major breach. The National Security Council finally admitted that the Chinese spy balloon was able to gather intelligence from several sensitive American military bases. Once again, this resident, this CCP puppet in the White House is continuing to break down the national security of the United States and make this nation weak again by exposing the United States to such incredible informational breaches at the same time that the CCP is setting up bases in Cuba. This is unprecedented times, and we are in a just absolutely mind-blowing situation here, where the entire the entire safety of this nation is at risk, and we've become a clown show. We've become a joke on the global stage. We've gone from being completely respected and even feared on the global stage with our President Donald Trump to being a laughingstock of the world through the Biden's Department of Defense. This is just absolute. This is disaster. This is some terrible things for the nation. It's just absolutely insane. And then on top of that, we have here the International Monetary Fund proposes global central bank digital currency system and move towards cashless society so they can control people. In a development that seems more dystopian than dynamic, the International Monetary Fund announced its plan to develop a global central banking digital currency platform. This decision raises significant questions about monetary sovereignty, financial privacy, and global equity. While IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva argued for the need for global CBDCs at a conference attended by the African central banks in Rabat, Morocco, critics are skeptical. This is great. We have the World Bank pushing through the digital IDs, and now the IMF calls for global CBDCs. That's it. Those are the final two organizations below the BIS in the global power hierarchy. CBDCs should not be fragmented national propositions. To have more efficient and fairer transaction, we need systems that connect countries. We need interoperability, Georgieva told a conference. For this reason, at the IMF, we are working on the concept of a global CBDC platform, she said. IMF wants central bank to agree on a common regulatory framework for a digital currency that will allow global interoperability. Failure to agree on a common platform would create a vacuum that would likely be filled by cryptocurrency, she said. CBDC is a digital currency controlled by the central bank, which will, while cryptocurrencies are nearly always decentralized. Already, 114 central banks are at some stage of CBDC exploration, with about 10 already crossing the finish line, she said. If countries develop CBDCs only the domestic deployment, we are underutilizing their capacity, she added. CBDCs could also help promote financial inclusion and make remittances cheaper, she said, noting that the average cost of money transfer stands at 6.3%, amounting to $44 billion annually. Georgieva stressed that the CBDCs should be backed by assets and added that cryptocurrencies are an investment opportunity when backed by assets, but when they are not, they are a speculative investment. At the IMF, we are working hard to this is the tweet by Tim Hinchcliffe. At the IMF, we are working hard on the concept of global CBDC platform. IMF managing director says, let's listen in to her statement here.
That if we are to be successful, CBDCs could not be fragmented national propositions. To have transactions more efficient and fairer, we need systems that connect countries. In other words, we need interoperability. And for this reason, at the IMF, we are working hard on the concept of a global CBDC platform to trade and to manage risks. And my colleague, Tobias Adrian, will talk more about it later.
The move towards a single universally accepted digital currency, one controlled by an international body, is concerning for a number of reasons. First, there is an issue of monetary sovereignty. Currently, each nation maintains control of its own monetary policy, allowing for adjustments based on specific domestic economic conditions. With a global CBDC, however, the power would be severely diminished, raising questions about the potential for an unequal economic influence among nations. Secondly, the concept of a financial privacy could be entirely uprooted as more transactions become digital. The potential for surveillance and control increases exponentially. Rather than engaging in an open, thoughtful discourse on the merits of drawbacks of decentralization, this stance leans towards fear-mongering. It appears to be more of a power grab than to attempt to create a fair financial future. To trust grifter Joe Biden and Democrats with a digital currency is naive, to say the least. It will be another tool in the arsenal to punish and starve the political opponents. We must never let this happen. Oh, what a nightmare that would be if we move to a central bank digital currency system. Wow. Let's listen to this clip real quick on how they control your free mind.
There are two ways in which people are controlled. First of all, frighten people, and secondly, demoralize them. An educated, healthy, and confident nation is harder to govern. And I think there's an element in the thinking of some people. We don't want people to be educated, healthy, and confident because they would get out of control. The top 1% of the world's population own 80% of the world's wealth. It's incredible that people put up with it. They're poor, they're demoralized, they're frightened, and therefore they think perhaps the safest thing to do is take orders and hope for the best.
And that's exactly what would happen. We would lose any chance of sovereignty we would get with a central bank currency system. And wow, we are in bad shape if that happens. Well, there's one person standing in the way of that, and the one person who tells us over and over again that that our enemies are waging war against us, the people. It's not him who's the target, but it's us, and he's standing in the way. And never forget that that he's the one standing in between us and destruction. Donald Trump has put himself in the face, in the way of the Americans' destruction over and over and over again. And he spoke on Saturday and on Sunday, but let's listen in a little bit how he spoke at the Faith and Freedom Conference. I've got a few different clips we're going to play.
Never forget, our enemies want to stop me because I'm the only one who can stop them, and I'm stopping them because of you. I didn't need this. I didn't need it. If these corrupt persecutions succeed, they will complete their takeover of this country and destroy your way of life forever. And that's where it's going. That's where it's going. It's a disgrace. They want to take away my freedom because I will never let them take away your freedom. It's very simple. They want to silence me because I will never let them silence you. And in the end, they're not after me, they're after you, and I just happen to be standing in their way. That's all it is. That's all it is. Very simple. 7 years, you and I have been fighting side by side to rescue our country from evil and from the sinister forces who hate it. I believe they hate it, and I believe they actually want to destroy it. Now we're approaching the most important battle of our lives. As we gather today, our beloved nation is teetering on the edge of tyranny. I believe that, and you believe that. Our enemies are waging war on faith and freedom, on science and religion, on history and tradition, on law and democracy, on God Almighty himself. They are waging war to be that way. When I get back into the Oval Office, I will totally obliterate the deep state. Remember, we didn't know if there was a deep state. People would say, yeah, I don't know. When I was president, the world was stable and calm because America was respected and strong. Now, as we see in Russia and all of these other places, this whole world is on fire. This world is on fire. Before I even arrive at the Oval Office, I will have the horrible war between Russia and Ukraine totally settled. I'll have it done in 24 hours. I say that, and I would do that. That's easy compared to some of the things. I'd get that done in 24 hours. I know them both. I know them both. As the Bible says, blessed are the peacemakers. See that? I will be your peacemaker. I was your peacemaker. And we'll create the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to declassify and publish all documents on deep state spying. They spy on so much. Censorship, corruption, including all of that on Christians. The Christians have been under siege under this administration. Just please remember that. Please remember that when they tell you about how much they love you. They don't love you at all. They don't love you at all. Never again will federal law enforcement be used to target religious believers. And hopefully never again will it be used to target opponents in an election, because that's what they're doing. Americans of faith are not a threat to our country. Americans of faith are the soul of our country. And when I'm back in the White House, I will once again appoint rock-solid conservative judges and the mold of justices like Antonin Scalia and the great Clarence Thomas, who really they are going after right now very unfairly. You read that, sir, very unfairly. And before Election Day 2024, I will again release the full list of names from which I will select my appointments to the United States Supreme Court. I did that last time, and it had a big impact. To stop the Marxist, and they are indeed Marxist, or worse, fascist, Marxist, prosecutors who release rapists and murderers while persecuting conservatives and people of religion, I will direct a completely overhauled DOJ to investigate every radical DA in America, AG in America, for their illegal racist and reverse enforcement of the law. These are bad people. And they're being run by the DOJ, just in case you have any questions.
So he was on fire like no other. It was probably one of the better speeches that I've seen in quite a while. And he called out a lot of interesting stuff. Really putting it out there about the this weaponization of the DOJ and the DOD, and they've been coming after him. And after his most recent indictment, his most recent arrest, his numbers have just gone through the roof. And I think the people are waking up and seeing through the illusion. I think the old feckled man in the White House in D.C., him and his criminal, debaucherous, degenerate crime family is starting to crumble, just like the rest of the deep state foundation. And General Michael Flynn, he put out a statement about this influence peddling scheme of this Biden crime regime.
There is no reasonable doubt that President Biden was an active participant in an unlawful international influence peddling scheme. My name is Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, and whatever you may think about President Donald J. Trump or his recent federal indictment, the speed of the investigation and the breadth of the indictment is breathtaking compared to the inaction for comparable crimes allegedly committed by Hillary Clinton.
We did not find clear evidence.
The incredible slow walking of the investigation of Hunter Biden, and Attorney General Merrick Garland's refusal to appoint a special prosecutor to investigate Joe Biden's role in the Biden family's international influence peddling scheme. Does any reasonable human being believe that Joe never discussed Hunter's business with Hunter, or that Joe did not know anything about a scheme that so far has ensnared at least 9 close Biden family relatives? It was reported recently that Hunter will plead guilty to 2 tax misdemeanors and defer a gun reporting offense with no prison time, and the right to have his record partially expunged after 2 years. Good thing Hunter is a white dude, and oh yeah, being the son of a president also helps. It's not just a stark contrast between use of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, to go after 5 Trump associates, including yours truly, before FARA is ignored when exploring Hunter's activities for Ukraine and China, or the contrast between aggressive prosecutions of pro-life protesters compared to the pass given to abortion rights protesters, or the horribly disproportionate treatment of January 6 protesters compared to the left-wing protesters who destroyed billions of dollars of property and killed more than 24 Americans. Rather, it is all of these things. Either Democrats, Republicans, progressives, conservatives, and centrists should be subject to equally fierce investigations and prosecutions, or they should all be subject to neither. Either we have the rule of law or not. With the provision that every American is entitled to a presumption of innocence, unless, of course, you're a conservative who supports Trump, and much of what is known of the Biden family crime organization is alleged, there is powerful evidence that Joe Biden committed multiple felonies as a co-conspirator in an international Biden family fraud and racketeering scheme, regardless of whether he personally received bribes or not. This isn't over, and Americans of every stripe, faith, and class better wake up to the fact that we have 2 completely different sets of laws in America.
Very well done. Great message by General Flynn there. And anybody who has gone against that crime family tends to be called out, tends to be exposed, tends to be canceled, if you will, and shut down, attacked on the media, and right now, the second biggest political opponent to the Biden family is RFK Jr. He is his opponent running for the Democratic nomination of that party, and he has been shut down. He has been slandered. He has been ignored. Every single thing you could do to this man, except for arresting and doing what they've done to Donald Trump and by threatening his family. Has been done to this man so far in a very short period of time. And now it turns out that the DNC is not even going to allow for debates with RFK Jr. and Joe Biden. So let's listen in on RFK and speaking about how the DNC will handle all this.
Do you fear? I shouldn't say fear. Do you think you're going to have a rougher attack from the Democratic Party or from the Republican Party as far as trying to take your legs out and discredit you and all that jazz?
Well, I think right now I'm going to get it worse, much worse from the Democrats. So, because I'm running against the Democrat, I'm running against the Democratic president. And so, of course, they're going to come after me. And it's not just the Democratic Party. There's all of these people who are allied with the White House, and you can read their talking points. You can read. I know how it works. That the White House is sending memos to, all of their friends in the media, and they use the same words, the same language. I saw Robert Reich, who I've known for many years, did a sort of a hateful editorial about me yesterday, but and I don't know what happened, but I suspect because he was using language that I've now seen popping up everywhere, that I suspect that one of the things they all started using this week is that this is a vanity campaign for Robert Kennedy, but that vanity campaign was in probably 100 different articles written by different authors that I saw this week. And I just know enough about how things work that I know that the White House is, sending those memos out to friendly journalists saying, okay, here's how to go at him. Here's how to go at him. So, so I think it's not going to come directly from the White House. It's going to come from their proxies. It's going to come from the New York Times. It's going to come from the Washington Post. It's going to come from Daily Beast, Salon, Slate, the other organs that are run that are, have these weird relationships. Rolling Stone now, which has this weird relationship with the intelligence community. And you'll see it, and they'll all be using the same thing, and they're going to be hammering me for the next 8 months.
Absolutely, that's exactly what he's about to face, and it's already begun, and it's going to get much more intense and much more, aggressive. He put out a great video yesterday. I don't have it at the moment, but I put out this great video of him working out yesterday, and put a message out there to training for the Joe Biden debates, and it's for a 69-year-old man looks fit, ripped, and ready to roll. So that's pretty awesome situation. But we see this whole dismantling of the nation, and we're in the middle of the end of what they're calling Pride Month, and there's been these disgusting pride parades all over the nation, including in Seattle with naked men on bikes shaking their junk for little children, and in Denver, Colorado, you had all of these people dressed in furry costumes, pandering and not pandering, but like playing their cute furriness to children on the side of the streets. You had in, I believe it was Portland, you had a old white dude in his tighty whities twerking for little children on the streets. And in New York City, you had all of these naked trans folks playing in fountains in the middle of a public park. And this has just been the continual erosion of the fabric of our society, of the moral high ground, the moral foundation of the values of the Christian Judeo-West. And it's all planned. It's like, how would you destroy a nation? And you destroy the nation by demoralizing its people and ripping away the fabric of the nuclear family. And there's this little video that Ultra Mega Media put out that was on the Bannon War Room. And let's check this out.
If you wanted to destroy the most powerful military in the world, what would you do? Well, among the many things you might try is hosting drag queen story hours on military bases.
U.S. military defends drag show at largest training center as, quote, essential to morale and readiness.
I became the first ever Navy Digital Ambassador, and technically I'm the first drag queen as a Navy Digital Ambassador.
Why are they happening on military bases?
I'm white, and I want to understand it.
What would you do? Well,
you know what the Joint Chiefs told us the greatest threat facing America was? Global warming.
Today, no nation can find lasting security without addressing the climate crisis.
This is not a joke.
If you wanted to destroy the most powerful military in the world, what would you do? Well,
why are you firing 20,000 trained military personnel because they won't get a vaccine that doesn't work?
It's a valid military requirement for unit readiness. We fight.
COVID vaccine was experimental, and you tried to force everybody into it.
A future Chinese soldier holding a gun with their target trained on an American, do they care what color he or she is? It's a yes or no question.
I don't know what the Chinese soldier thinks, but I do know that the people,
would you imagine
that the Chinese government has discriminated against people because of their race?
Does the enemy care what pronoun we are using when he or she is pointing a weapon at us, ready to kill us?
Hi, my name is Johnny, and I use he, him pronouns.
Hi, and I'm Conchi, and I use she, her pronouns.
And we're here to talk about pronouns.
Again, I can't speak to the Chinese soldiers.
I cannot speak to the mindset and the hypothetical.
Well, what would you think?
If you wanted to destroy the most powerful military in the world, what would you do?
There is a growing concern that the U.S. might not have enough military hardware to defend itself and its allies if needed.
How will you handle a service member who identifies as male on some days and female on other days?
We don't seek to block China from its role as a major power, nor to stop China from growing their economy or advancing the interests of their people.
China right now is functionally turning Cuba into a stationary aircraft carrier right off the coast of Florida.
That is why this latest Soviet threat must and will be met with determination.
You're some of the bravest and most inspiring people I've ever known.
Because when they see weakness, they're going to push and push and push until you smash them in the mouth.
Some of the bravest and most inspiring people I've ever known.
Yes, that is a good reflection of exactly what we're facing right now. And we're watching the destruction of a nation, destruction of a U.S. military, destruction of the values and fabric of our society, the nuclear family. We're watching it all fall apart. And all of this really got ramped up during the COVID pandemic. We watched all of it sort of play out in front of us. And now, finally, what was supposed to be released 10 days ago or so, the report of the origin of the coronavirus, of the lab leak, was finally released. and without much fanfare, with kind of being swept under the carpet, and really didn't give us much of anything, and a lot of things were redacted. It seems like it was just a compulsory report that they put out in order to appease their request to put out a report, and didn't actually give us any sort of real information. Let's listen to a report that was about this report on the War Room today.
Walk me through what the unclassified version of the Wuhan lab, ma'am, and why Natalie Winters could have done a better job with just her reporting under Raheem Kassam of the National Pulse and here at the War Room over the last couple of years, ma'am.
Well, unfortunately, I think it's safe to say that our American ruling class has declared a war on the American people, too. In this case, I think it's really information warfare. Before we get into the actual report, I think it's worth noting just some of the background details. First of all, they released this on a Friday afternoon, June 23rd. They definitely tried to bury it in the news cycle. Of course, it hasn't really been picked up by a lot of mainstream media outlets, when I would argue this story should have led the news cycle. But even more importantly, remember, we waited 3 years and 90 days for this report, okay? It basically chalks up to about 4 pages. Though the document itself is 10 pages, the first page is a cover sheet, the second is the table of contents, and the third is an executive summary. And the final 3 pages of the document, I kid you not, it's a dictionary, it's a glossary for terms that they use in the report. And it's not Fauci, it's not the National Institutes of Health. It's terms like DNA, RNA, biosecurity. It's extremely offensive. It's insulting to the intelligence of the American people, just I think the circumstances surrounding this report and the lack of information, when it's important and really imperative to remember that it was stipulated that they would have to declassify, quote, any and all information related to the origins of COVID-19 and how the Wuhan Institute of Virology played a role in the creation of this virus. But within the, I think it's third sentence of this report, they say, oh, and by the way, there's a classified annex, which we haven't released to the American public. So that is directly at odds with what their mandate was. But I think the most important part here, and we can obviously get down into the, the nitty gritty, the actual substance of the report, but it's so weak. But the evidence that they do include in there, this is stuff that we have been talking about at the War Room for years now. It's stuff that random anonymous Twitter sleuth accounts have been unearthing for years. It's stuff that the federal government is acting like, this is some novel discovery that they've, turned the world over and they've created this new story about the novel origins of COVID. This is stuff that we've been talking about forever. So I really think it's just an attempt. They use the right terms. Sure, they talk about gain of function research. They talk about coronaviruses and what the Wuhan Institute of Virology was doing in terms of their ties to the People's Liberation Army. But I think it's sort of co-opting the broader narrative, which really is damning, not just to the Chinese Communist Party when it comes to the origins of COVID, but more precisely and frankly, more importantly, is how the American establishment, particularly the kind of pharma industrial complex, the medical industrial complex, a la National Institutes of Health, Anthony Fauci, they're basically absolved of any guilt in terms of the creation of COVID. The term Fauci doesn't even appear in this report. National Institutes of Health, National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, U.S. taxpayer dollars, any of that is not even included in this report.
Now is going to join us at 6 from Brian Costello, Derek Harvey. We're going to go through some of the stuff with Sequoia in more detail. Natalie, Mike Turner, this is what confuses me, so you got to help me out here. Mike Turner's a Republican. He's head of the Intelligence Committee today. You've got, we control the whole House. Why is there not?
All right, so that was Natalie Winters. Again, she pointed it out exactly. They buried it on a Friday. It disappeared into the deep pages of the news reports and basically insulted the intelligence of the American people with no actual information. I think we've had Twitter feeds with more information than this official release, and it is just an absolute abomination and a cover-up for the protecting of this, the CCP. Let's listen in to Dr. Robert Redfield talk a little bit about this cover.
Got into the Wuhan lab, that Peter Daszak was, who would be like the last person you would want, on this team, was part of the team. So much funny business, including with Anthony Fauci, who seemed to be trying to take everyone, the media, the government, the public, off the trail of the Chinese. Why do you think there was this effort to sort of cover up for the Chinese and their involvement in this?
Well, and Rachel, it's not just to cover up for the Chinese. I think it's also to cover up for the United States, because we did fund a lot of this research. Right. And I think, unfortunately, there's really been just a lack of transparency. I think it's worth noting that the Energy Department and the FBI, both who said Energy Department moderate certainty came from the lab, and the FBI moderate certainty, and the energy low certainty. Both of them use their own internal scientists. They have very good, strong scientific groups within their agencies. I think the other intelligence agencies largely relied on outside consultants. And this is why I think it's important for each agency to basically go on record, what is the data they used, who were their experts that they involved, and then what was their analysis and the basis for their analysis. And then I'd like each agency to also make commentary on the alternative agency's analysis, because two of the agencies clearly say this came from the lab. Four of them are on that they still think it came from nature, although I will argue there's absolutely no scientific evidence that we've gotten to support the spillover event. When everyone says follow the science, show me the science. There is no science for spillover event right now. And it's really just disappointing because we're at risk for another pandemic. Right. And if we can't learn from this first pandemic, we're going to repeat the problem.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I think the purpose of this very vague report was to make sure there were no consequences for Anthony Fauci or for the Chinese, who should be held responsible financially and reputationally for the 7 million people who died of COVID and all the economic destruction that ensued in the aftermath. Dr. Redfield, thank you so much. You've been such an honest broker on this, and we appreciate your opinion.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, once again, it seems to be this partnership between the CCP and the U.S. And there's certain factions, this criminal cartel that whether it's in the pharmaceutical industry, whether it's in our DOJ, DOD, and the executive branches, it seems they've all teamed up, and this entire hoax, this global pandemic, and the takeover that occurred after that all seems to be in the same path, in the same alignments, and we have some major issues going on. Let's listen into Highwire. You have the former NIH director talking a little bit about.
The former head of the NIH, when we speak about the NIH, Dr. Bernadine Healy, so one of the leading scientists in the world, she looked into vaccines. She was asked in a CBS interview, this is many years ago, but why is it that, what she found when she was looking at the vaccine program, I think this says it all. This is why they won't debate. Take a look at this.
This is the time when we do have the opportunity to understand whether or not there are susceptible children, perhaps genetically, perhaps they have a metabolic issue, mitochondrial disorder, immunological issue, that makes them more susceptible to vaccines, plural, or to one particular vaccine, or to a component of vaccine, like mercury. The fact that there is concern that you don't want to know that susceptible group is a real disappointment to me. If you know that susceptible group, you can save those children. The reason why they didn't want to look for those susceptibility groups was because they're afraid that if they found them, however big or small they were, that would scare the public away.
It sounds like you don't think the hypothesis of a link between vaccines and autism is completely irrational.
So when I first heard about it, I thought, well, that doesn't make sense to me. The more you delve into it, if you look at the basic science, if you look at the research that's been done in animals, if you also look at some of these individual cases, and if you look at the evidence that there is no link, what I come away with is the question has not been answered.
I think it's really important for everyone to wrap their head around what she said there, because I think it's true. It's human nature, and it makes some sense. Our medical establishment refuses to do proper studies, demographic studies, or even retrospective studies using databases like the VSD at the CDC that has over 10 million people in it. There have been studies of that database saying you absolutely can do a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study, a comparative study, to see if there's a difference in health outcomes and maybe start triangulating the issues. But what she's telling you is the reason they refuse to do those studies is that they are petrified that if they ever do a study, even asking the question, and they find out that there's even a small group of people that are actually being injured and killed by vaccines, which is a no-brainer. You know that's the case. Penicillin's not good for everybody. We have alternatives for people who have allergic reactions to penicillin. That is true about every drug. Every cancer drug has an alternative that you can find if the one you're using is killing you. This is true about vaccines too, but the vaccine program is the only product forced upon you by a mandate, the only one being forced if you want to go to school. So they're terrified that if you find out there's a small group of people that are actually being injured and killed, like they've been saying across the world, then they're afraid the rest of you that are not having an issue with vaccines will freak out, that you'll somehow identify with that smaller group. And this is what has the entire medical establishment paralyzed, and why proper science is not being done. We need to find a way through this.
So we just see a little clip there just to remind us that, the cover-up of this entire pandemic, the cover-up of the origins were created by Anthony Fauci, the NIH, gain-of-function research within the Wuhan laboratory. And then what was the solution? The solution was vaccines. The solution was a forced vaccine, forced down the throat without any actual research. And now we're watching the death rates rise. We're watching abortion rates rise. We're watching the birth rates plunge. Where we just saw a very healthy MMA athlete in the middle of training go into cardiac arrest. We just watched a professional basketball player, 28 years old, develop myocarditis after the second dose of the Pfizer vaccine and call it out, and then died shortly later during a stress test. We watched multiple different athletes lose their legs because of blood clots. We're even looking at head coach of the Colorado University, Deion Sanders, one of the best athletes in the world, blood clots in both legs. We're watching this over and over and over again. We're watching even a guy named Big Pokey, who's a rapper who just died on stage last week. And it's undeniable that the destruction, the war on the people is real, and it's out there and it's happening. And we're in a place right now where everything's divided. The country is divided. Our politics are divided. They're divided over vaccines. We're divided over sexual agendas and pronouns. And what I wanted to bring into this is that is the art of war being played out against us, the psychological manipulations in order to create chaos, division, and a confusion throughout society in order to break apart any sort of understanding of what's been really being the war that's being waged against the people. And when the people can't see their enemy, they're most likely more likely to fight each other. And that's exactly what's happening. The enemy and everything, the world has been so confused, has been so complicated with psychological operations, manipulations, and information control, that it's pitted people against people. People don't know what's right and what's wrong anymore. People don't know what's left and what's right. People don't know what's up and what's down. And it's gotten to a point where this has been going on for a very, very, very long time. But now it's starting to come out into the purview of the people. It's starting to become more apparent on every aspect of our life. And so by keeping our eyes open, keeping a 48-hour open mind before we jump into a story, and understanding that what we're seeing with our own eyes may not actually be legitimate. So do your own research, get in there. Don't believe anything that anyone's telling you, including me, including the mainstream news. Research. Find out with your own hard work, your own research, your own effort and time, and the information that you need, and know that there's plenty of darkness, Satan, evil energies that are out there trying to persuade you to go down dark paths and lead you down this psychological lies and manipulations. So it's a challenge of mental strength that we're facing, and we really need to understand the art of war and understand the fog that exists within this information and psychological warfare control. This is fifth generation warfare, and we're in the middle of it. And this is a war, and the war is coming after you. It's coming after your children, and it's not ending anytime soon. So, with that, keep your head up, keep your prayers on, and let's see you guys on Wednesday for the next show. Do your own research, keep your eyes open, and take care of your families. It's been a pleasure to be here with you guys. Remember, we are citizen-funded journalists, and just basically able to keep this going with donations with folks like you. If you can donate any way, shape, or form to this show, Rumble Ramps or Red Pills over on pill.net, we absolutely appreciate it. Venmo, Cash App, Buy Me a Coffee is out there still at the moment. We haven't been canceled yet, I guess. And we appreciate anything that you can get. We also have our sponsor, Be Nourished Honey, some of the most amazing honey on the planet, nourishedmaui.com. You can get your own personal incredible honey for 22% off using the term Liberty at checkout at nourishedmaui.com. You can get the best honey on the planet delivered directly to your front door. nourishedmaui.com, Liberty for 22% off, the best honey on the planet right here from the island of Maui. All right, everybody. Well, we're going to bid you a good evening, and we're going to close it out with a video, and hope to see you all on Wednesday. Make sure that you share this video. Make sure that you click that thumbs up, that like button, no matter what platform you're on. And become a follower. Follow Liberty Arise Media. We've got multiple different different content creators 7 days a week on Liberty Arise Media. So thanks so much. I see Holy Moly over there jumping in. Thanks for passing through, and we'll see you all on Wednesday. Be well, everyone.
Come and see the crooks and thieves riot in the renegade streets, working for the devil's deed. The torch of the work is done. The Savior comes to save the weak. The lame man walks, the blind man sees. In a land where no one's free, they know that the day will come. Shadows rise, step out of the darkness and into the light. Yeah. Calling our heathens, outlaws and sinners. Start marching, start walking. Swindlers and dealers, liars and cheaters. Start running, the day's coming. Calling our heathens. Calling our heathens. Spirits flow to morning light underneath the full moon bright. Whiskey and a little moonshine, they dance with the rising sun. The wicked road in lawless land wash the blood off from their hands, scheming with their evil plans, but justice soon will come. Wrong is right, no one knows. fight, so join the fight, yeah. Calling all heathens, all outlaws and sinners. Start marching, start walking, yeah. Swindlers and dealers, liars and the cheaters. Start running, your day's coming. Calling all heathens.
We've got to run to the trouble, folks. And what is the trouble? The trouble is the Biden administration that is seeking to turn this country into a socialist hellhole. The trouble is Antifa that wants to roam the streets and beat you into submission. Calling all heathens, outlaws and sinners. Start marching, start walking, swindlers and dealers, liars and cheaters. Start running, your day's coming, it's coming. Calling all heathens. All the right to work on the side. And there ain't no reason to be afraid. And there ain't no reason to not take the challenge head on. Because I'm going to tell you who we come from. We don't come from some weak, jellyback, spineless. That's not who we come from. None of us.
They have ruined Election Day in the United States of America. That's provable. And that's enough for me to fight the left with every fiber in my body.